Welcome to the week of December 29th. We're going to wrap up 2025 and kick off 2026 this week. We start with an in and out workout of a continuous run of 3 to 5 miles with in and out half miles. The in or the higher intensity half miles are at roughly 5K pace, 85 to 90%. We're targeting the top end of that zone, but if you get there too quickly within that half mile, you'll be tying up and struggling and working way too hard for the workout. So if you're maybe for the first quarter mile, 85%, so very top end threshold, and then the second 400 of that 800, if you're a little bit anaerobic, that's fine. The anaerobic part will come easier and come sooner as you work through that workout, because the out or the easier recovery half miles are at marathon pace. And marathon pace isn't all that fast until it's a recovery effort, and then it becomes that. We're dealing with current race paces, which many of you might not really know heading into January, because it's been a little bit since you've raced. Fitness has maybe lagged a little bit from your recovery. We're building back up, so you're probably in better shape than maybe it feels like, but that's a pretty dicey thing. So a good rule of thumb is about 45 seconds differential. I looked at a few different paces throughout of if this person can run this for a marathon, here's what we'd expect for 5K. And by and large, it came out to about 45 seconds. It's not a rule, it's just a guideline. We don't want to see 2 minutes. We don't want to see 20 seconds. So somewhere around 45 seconds is a good differential for that. Now for the in half miles at 85 to 90% or roughly 5K pace, it's serious. You should be focused. There's not going to be a whole lot of talking with your training partners during those half miles, and you need to stay focused. And part of that focus is getting to that effort and also maintaining that effort and not going too hard, because we don't want, as we look at subsequent half miles, we don't want to look at them and see that they got significantly slower. The out or the recovery at roughly marathon pace, those are also very focused, but it should be comfortable. The focus is not letting it go to a true recovery jog. If we're dropping roughly 45 seconds, we don't want it to drop 2 minutes because you're not focused and you're just thinking about immediate relief from the harder half mile. Part of the benefit of this workout is that first 30, 60 seconds, maybe a little bit longer into that recovery half mile where you're still getting benefit. You're still breathing relatively hard, even though you've backed off the pace substantially. So this is similar to what we did a couple of weeks ago, where we did 3 miles, or 3 minutes rather, at threshold and 2 minutes at long run recovery pace. So you can see you're getting a little bit more recovery on this. The time for the half mile for some of you is still very similar. For some of you, there's some differential there, but the ratio is certainly more even. We're having a progression here because we wanted to stay at threshold. Now we're going over threshold, trying to get some anaerobic work. And then on the recovery, rather than long run pace, it's marathon race pace. So a progression from that. Fortunately, most of the feedback I got in Training Peaks as I was reviewing workouts was very positive on that workout. So hopefully you enjoyed it enough to do something very similar again. It's just a good way to work into the economy, speed type, higher quality workouts. And I'm going to talk more about that in a few minutes, especially after I talk about the moderate quality workout and the questions raised in your head. Why are we doing all this fast running? We're barely into January. I'm going to explain that. So moderate quality workout, 1 minute fast, 90 seconds recovery. For this workout, when we go 1 minute on, 1 minute off, that 1 minute has to be really slow. And even then, it's such a quick recovery as you get deeper into the workout. Sometimes the workout gets to be a little bit harder than it's intended. So we're going 90 seconds. 2 minutes can be too long. So we're going minute on, 90 seconds off. Now, this minute on is very similar to the pace up here, but rather than doing it for a half mile, you're doing it for a minute, so far less. But it still might be around 5K pace, something like that. You should just feel like you're running strong. It shouldn't be some horrific exertion. It shouldn't be completely aerobic. It should be a nice, strong effort, and certainly not like we're doing 400s. I know some of you see minute repeats and you start thinking this is basically 400-meter repeats. It's not that. It's not that fast. This is a moderate quality workout. And then the minute and a half or 90-second recovery, keep that as slow as you need to. We don't need to be excessive and go from running 5-minute pace or 5:30 or whatever to going 10, 11, 12-minute pace. It doesn't have to be that super slow-mo jog because we're not going all that hard. If we were running those as hard as you could and we only had 60 to 90 seconds recovery, then maybe. And I'd also encourage you, don't walk. When I see somebody doing these and suddenly the recoveries are at 15-minute pace or slower, that means you're overrunning this part of it. There is a place for walking between fast intervals. This isn't it. This isn't fast enough. It's not intense enough. Kind of wrong time of the season as well for that. So moderate quality workout, more fast running. Now, we're assuming with these that we have decent footing. For this one, hopefully we luck out. Most of you are able to get in the 3-2 a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully we have some good footing for that one. Certainly if you have to go to the treadmill, it's not the worst one to do on the treadmill because it's easy pushing buttons between those paces. For this one, you only need a minute stretch of good footing, so that one might not be as difficult to get in. Long run this week is an endurance long run. We're just covering the distance. Slow is not the goal, but certainly we don't need to go racing either. Most of you are increasing a mile or two or maybe holding the distance. If last time it was 12 to 14 and you ran 14 and that was a bit more of a challenge than you expected, maybe this week we're at 14. Maybe that was just a rougher day and you're ready to go 16. When you have a range, unless you're suddenly jumping to all the high ends of the ranges, which is a problem when it's across the board because that really starts to add up. But when you go out for a long run, think about the high end of the range. And if it's just not your day and it's a real struggle for whatever reason, then the bottom end of that range is fine. Keep an eye on stoppage time. Some of you are doing a fantastic job on that. Some of you who historically have taken longer breaks throughout the long run are doing a good job. The limiting factor in longer races and the limiting factor in building endurance is muscular tension for a long period of time. So every break that you take is making that easier to cover that distance. And for an endurance long run, we want to keep going. So splash and dash, make those stops when they're necessary as quick as possible. Okay, explanation on if you're looking at these workouts and you're saying it's December, it's early January, why are we running this fast? We back up from race day. And most of you are going to be racing marathon or half marathon in mid-April. April 18th is Carmel, April 20th is Boston Marathon. So basically we have 3.5 months. If we look at that, especially if we look at that as if this was summer leading into fall, we have basically 3 months. Because that last couple of weeks will be a taper and we're not doing a substantial amount of quality work there. We'll do some, but it's more maintenance rather than building fitness. So 3 months out, we're doing workouts like this to prep you for the higher intensity, longer, more challenging economy workouts. And as a reminder, economy is when you go over threshold and you're breathing hard. It's not a whole heck of a lot of fun while you're doing it, but it's very effective. We never do a whole lot of that. It's the only type of workout that we go periods of the year not doing. But we're preparing you for that by doing these things where we're dipping our toe into 90%, but not for that long, maybe a quarter mile on each of those half miles and maybe 20 seconds in these minutes. So we're not doing a whole lot of it. We're not going out running 400, 800, or even mile repeats at that economy level. So this is preparing you for that. I know from personal experience and also coaching experience that if we don't do this, and we don't do this for enough period of time, when we go to that higher intensity, let's say in February, we decide, okay, now we need some of that higher intensity stuff. We're heading into polar bear. Now we're only 2.5 months out from the goal race. Injury rates skyrocket because you just can't go from relatively easy running, threshold running to now we're running really hard. So this is a bit of a transition period with 3 months to go. With 2 months to go, that's where we're really hitting the economy hard, because we want to drive up your VO2. We want you as economical as possible, which is basically how efficient you are at every given pace. And of course, we're most interested in goal pace or race pace. So we're doing that about 2 months out, because when we get closer to marathon, half marathon, we're going to get more specific. That doesn't mean we drop it. It just means the dosage changes, or the amount of the recipe that's made up of economy changes. And then we're doing more threshold. We're doing longer, more sustained work that is more specific to the demands of marathon and half marathon. If you're training for a mile or 2 mile and your peak race is going to be in May or June, this is going to look a little different. We're more interested in endurance and stamina because we have a little bit longer period of time, but also the specificity of your races is more economy and speed based. So hopefully that makes sense. I know there's something that doesn't feel quite right about seeing snow or seeing it's 10 degrees and doing this kind of work, but that's why we're doing it. As we know, if you're going to run a marathon or half marathon in great spring or fall weather, you have to deal with the terrible winter weather and the really hot, humid summer weather. So that's why we're getting this in. We also know if we don't start early enough, then if we're pushing our luck and starting as late as possible, we get a couple of bad weather days or weather weeks, and we miss a couple of key workouts. Now maybe we've cut that period of time that we had dedicated to that in half. So there is some method to the madness. Hopefully you'll find these workouts enjoyable. I always thought the transition workouts were fun because you're finally getting to run fast, but it's not all that challenging, and it's something that you recover from. And if we're looking at this, it's an easy workout to break down into what did you average for 5K, what did you average for 5 miles, what would you average for your in and your outs. So maybe a little more explanation than you wanted, but I thought it was important to talk about that. There's another week. We're going to kick off 2026.